Hey guys, tonight we step onto a moon-washed beach, so quiet you can practically hear the sand remembering every footprint. You're standing there with a few steady-eyed navigators who treat the night sky the way soft-spoken librarians treat a long overdue novel, with patience, affection, and just a hint of, please don't dog-ear that page. The stars above you aren't just decorations, they're guideposts, rising and setting in patterns so crisp that, honestly, you probably won't survive this voyage without them, unless you plan on swimming several hundred nautical miles, which I don't recommend. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk toward the canoes, sleek, low silhouettes that look almost alive in the starlight. They've been pulled onto the damp sand like sleeping sea creatures, and the hulls glow faintly where the moon brushes against them. Salt, wood, and a breath of hibiscus drift through the air as you climb aboard. The navigator at the bow gives you a little nod, the universal gesture for, welcome, don't fall in, and you settle onto the woven floor. The sea sighs, pushing the canoe forward with a lazy roll, as if giving you a preview of what it's like to be rocked to sleep by an entire ocean. The first thing you learn out here is that every departure begins long before you push off the shore. The navigators spend hours watching the sky's rehearsals, the slow rise of the eastern stars, the way their brightness shifts with the seasons, and the familiar rhythm of constellations that have been silently performing for thousands of years. A mainstream historical fact slips easily into the moment. You remember that Polynesian voyagers crossed vast stretches of the Pacific long before European ships arrived, using no compasses or astrolabes, just knowledge carried in memory and practice. It's one of those facts that sounds impossible until you're out here, with the night sky practically shouting directions at you like an overly enthusiastic GPS. You lean back, letting the canoe drift. The navigators begin murmuring to each other, their voices soft and steady. One points to a star rising just above the horizon. To you, it looks like any other dot of light. To them, it's an entire paragraph of instructions. They call it by a name that means the guide, though the translation is more poetic than literal. When it rises here, at this angle, during this month, it's a quiet signal that the wind you're about to meet is trustworthy. And yes, if the wind could speak, it would probably whisper like a librarian asking you not to eat chips in the reading room. Your standard moment that's somewhat accordion is located here. You're already drifting with the rhythm of the night, and the sky above you has grown fuller, richer, the way a library feels different once the lights dim and the softest sounds become amplified. The navigators exchange another quiet nod, and one gestures upward as if inviting you to turn the next page of a book you didn't even realize you were holding. Now you begin learning how the constellations themselves act as your sky's index, an orderly card catalog where each star cluster offers its own neat little hint about direction, weather, or the promise of land far ahead. The canoe glides forward, steady and unhurried. You tilt your head back, letting your eyes soften the way the navigator taught you. It's surprisingly hard not to squint. Your eyelids are clearly convinced they're auditioning for a role in an action movie. But as your gaze relaxes, the stars shift subtly, resolving into patterns you hadn't seen before. The constellations aren't drawn with thick lines like they are in textbooks. Instead, they appear only when you stop trying so hard, the same way your phone only recognizes your face after the 10th attempt. The navigator beside you murmurs the name of a constellation overhead. He describes how its position, halfway between its rising and setting points, acts like a mid-shelf reference in the sky's catalog. If you know where that shelf sits, you know how far your canoe has turned during the night. It's like cosmic Dewey Decimal navigation. You can almost imagine tiny celestial stickers attached to each star, labeling them with neat little numbers and phrases like General Directional Guidance 000.1. The sea below you responds in tiny, lazy shifts, and you catch the narrator's voice blending with the water's hush. A mainstream historical fact floats into your thoughts: how Polynesian navigators developed a remarkably sophisticated star compass, memorizing not just constellations, but their rising azimuths, the exact points where they emerge from the horizon. You've read somewhere that this knowledge wasn't written down, but passed from teacher to student through mentoring voyages like this one, where long nights on the ocean turn into living classrooms. The canoe's bow lifts slightly on a swell, and a quirky tidbit surfaces in your memory. Some navigators used to practice reciting constellation names in long, poetic sequences during community gatherings, partly to teach the next generation, and partly, you suspect, to show off. One navigator chuckles when he sees your raised eyebrows. Stars also enjoy applause, he whispers with a wink. You're pretty sure the stars in question would blush if they could. You reach up with your hand again, trying to measure the height of the constellation, mimicking the navigator's practice motions. This time your hand looks slightly less like a confused puppet, though you still feel mildly ridiculous. The navigator offers a single nod of approval. Progress. Above you, new constellations rise gently, like actors entering a stage with perfect timing. Some look familiar, yet strangely rearranged. After all, the sky here is not the sky you see from your backyard. A star near the horizon shimmers in an unusually steady way. The navigator explains that a stable shimmer near sea level often tells you the air is calm and the weather is likely to behave itself. This is comforting, though you still cast a tiny side eye at a particularly smug-looking cloud lingering in the distance. One constellation catches your eye, a curved line that looks a little like a reclining figure. The navigator tells you it's sometimes used to mark the boundary of a directional sector. If it rises too far north, the canoe's path must be corrected. If it's too far south, you're drifting. And drifting is fine if your goal is to take the scenic route, but less fine if you're aiming for an island that's the size of a backyard compared to the Pacific's living room. As the hours pass, your mind becomes more attuned to the constellation's subtle shifts. It's like learning to read in the new alphabet. At first, every star looks like a dot. Then, one by one, the dots arrange themselves into phrases, then sentences. The sky develops grammar. You start trying to read star sentences, and even if you mispronounce them internally, you're getting the gist. Historians still argue whether the earliest navigators deliberately mapped constellations into specific categories, or whether the patterns evolved organically through storytelling. Some think the constellations began as moral lessons, others as travel guides, and others still as seasonal markers for fishing and planting. You listen as the elder navigator whispers about traditions that shift from island to island,
each version valid in its own quiet way. You appreciate that there's no single correct way to read the sky, just like librarians sometimes shelf things in ways only they understand, much to the despair of every intern. A breeze sweeps across the canoe, carrying the scent of salt and something faintly floral you can't quite identify. You inhale deeply. It's so gentle you almost miss it, like a book page turning itself. The navigator taps your shoulder and points to a cluster of stars low in the east. These stars, he says, inform you not only of direction, but of the changing season. Their slightly altered brightness, their shifted ascent, tiny details that, when learned well, become part of the navigator's mental index. Brightness, you ask? Wondering how anyone can read subtle brightness changes on a night where the entire universe appears aggressively sparkly. He nods. Brightness, he repeats as though we're discussing the ripeness of fruit. You don't fully understand, but you pretend you do, and he lets you pretend. That mutual generosity again. Below you, the ocean's surface reflects patches of starlight like scattered notes on a dark sheet of music. You imagine the navigators reading both sky and sea the way a conductor reads the entire orchestra at once. You, on the other hand, are still working on identifying which way the canoe is pointing without asking someone every 6 seconds. A soft laugh comes from the navigator behind you. He gently explains that some constellations are like bookmarks. They tell you when you're approaching a turning point or when a directional shift is coming. He says this while casually steering the canoe with one foot, because apparently steering with hands is for amateurs. You try not to look too impressed, but it's difficult. The night deepens further, and the constellations of the southern sky come into clearer view. These are the ones you can't see in the northern hemisphere, and their presence gives you a small thrill, a new shelf in the sky's library. The navigator touches your shoulder lightly and draws your attention to a bright star in the southern arc, explaining it acts as an anchor, an invariant point around which your understanding of direction can stabilize. You hold your breath a little, not wanting to interrupt the moment. A faint glow far on the horizon draws your eye. The navigator smiles and shakes his head gently. Not land, he says, just the sky stretching. You didn't know the sky could stretch, but you decide not to question it. The sky probably has excellent flexibility. You lean back again as the canoe settles into a comfortable groove. The paddlers, silent until now, rest their paddles across their laps. No instruction needed. The stars are taking over the shift. The canoe hums its approval. You think about how the constellations function as both compass and calendar. They tell the navigators how far along the seasonal cycle they are. A certain constellation rising higher might hint that the wind trade will shift soon. Another fading earlier than expected might suggest the current is pulling you more quickly than usual. The whole system is precise, but also fluid, adaptable, much like the ocean itself. The navigator beside you describes how some constellations double as story anchors. Each star cluster has a tale that helps students remember its order and purpose. For instance, a cluster representing siblings traveling across the sky might signal a sequence to follow when plotting a course. You smile, imagining a bedtime storybook filled with constellations instead of illustrations. If only every textbook was that considerate. A quirky thought pops into your head, and because you've been at sea long enough to start thinking out loud, you mutter, "I wish my school had taught history through constellations." The navigator gives you a gentle, understanding nod. "We all learn differently," he replies. "Some through books, some through stars." You're not sure which category you fall into, but tonight you're firmly in the stars group. Another constellation rises, a triangular one the navigators treat with particular respect. They tell you it marks one of the long directional arcs that many voyages begin with. As it climbs, you sense the canoe adjusting ever so slightly. The navigator doesn't even speak, the boat simply shifts as if following an unspoken cue. You feel it like a soft nudge, nudging you too, as if reminding you to breathe more evenly. Historians still argue whether navigators memorize the star paths as static sequences or as dynamic stories that change with each voyage. The elder navigator, overhearing your thoughts, laughs softly. "Both," he says, "like cooking, a recipe and instinct." He gestures at the sky. You follow the pattern, but you also taste the night. Tasting the night feels poetic enough that you decide not to question it. The longer you watch, the more you notice that constellations don't arrive in isolation. They arrive like small groups of friends at a late-night gathering, some early, some fashionably late, some who seem to show up just to say hello before drifting off again. The navigators take note of these gatherings. If a certain star cluster rises before another, the wind direction is likely stable. If the order changes slightly, it might hint at a subtle shift in seasonal patterns. The canoe drifts through a region of calm water, so smooth it feels like gliding over polished stone. Above, a cluster that looks like a crooked bow appears. The navigator tells you it marks a cross-reference point in the sky's index, essentially a cosmic see-also note. You find yourself chuckling quietly at how the universe apparently thinks in footnotes. Your laughter blends with the soft lapping of the water.
The canoe has settled into such a smooth rhythm now that you've almost forgotten it's moving. It feels more like the world beneath you is doing the drifting, waves sliding past like drowsy librarians, returning books to the wrong shelves just to see if anyone notices. You shift slightly, adjusting your weight, and the canoe answers with a soft creak, as though acknowledging your presence. The navigators around you remain calm and alert, their ears practically tuned to the sea itself. Tonight, you begin learning something the navigators consider just as important as reading the stars: reading the waves. It's nothing like watching waves from the shore, where all you see is a repeating pattern of rise, crash, retreat. Out here, the waves aren't performing for anyone, they're communicating. They carry messages in their shape, their rhythm, even in the way they nudge the canoe. You're about to learn why the waves are considered the ocean's own library of reference materials. The eldest navigator taps the side of the canoe with 2 fingers. Took. Just once. You wait. Nothing happens. Then he does it again, and this time you realize he's not testing the wood, he's listening to it. The canoe vibrates lightly beneath you, and that tiny vibration contains more information than any weather app you've ever used. You lean down, touching your fingertips lightly to the hull. You feel a faint pulse, like the heartbeat of the sea. You're suddenly aware of how enormous the water around you is. It stretches into darkness in all directions, yet somehow the navigators can sense exactly what lies beyond each horizon. You whisper a question you didn't realize you were thinking. How do you read waves? The navigator smiles at you gently, the kind of smile someone gives when they remember being confused by the same question decades ago. He explains that waves come from many places: far storms, local winds, shifting currents, and each source leaves a unique imprint. The ocean becomes layered with energy, like a stack of ancient scrolls, and the navigator's job is to feel which scroll is on top. A mainstream historical fact rises in your mind. Expert navigators of Polynesia were renowned for detecting swell patterns even in complete cloud cover, when stars disappeared and the night became a blank page. They could still steer with uncanny precision, relying on memory, instinct, and a deep connection to wave lore. It's astonishing, especially when you think about how sometimes you struggle to detect whether your phone is on vibrate. The navigator sitting near your feet leans forward and gestures to the water. "Feel," he says, and you do. The canoe rises on a long, slow swell, steady, deep, dignified. Then a smaller ripple crosses from the side, playful and light. The navigator explains that these are 2 different wave families meeting: the long swell from a distant storm and the shorter waves from the local wind. Each family has its own attitude. The long swell rolls like it's seen too much to be bothered. The short wave is just excited to be here. The idea that waves carry personality feels like a joke, but also like the most truthful thing you've heard tonight. You're starting to recognize the ocean not as a single mass, but as a community of movements, each with histories and destinations of their own. A quirky tidbit hits you.
You once read that some navigators in specific island chains trained by lying in shallow water with their eyes closed for hours, learning to distinguish wave types by feel alone. Others practiced with shells placed in circles around their bodies, each shell representing a directional swell. If the pattern of vibrations changed, the student had to identify which shell moved. You imagine yourself lying in the shallows back home, neighbors walking past, wondering why you're face down in the surf like a dramatic sea cucumber. The thought makes you smile. The elder navigator clears his throat softly, drawing your focus. He dips a hand into the water and sweeps it lightly, feeling temperature changes. He points to the slightly warmer water sliding along the canoe's left side. Current, he explains. The warmth, he explains, can indicate a shift in direction, not of the boat, but of the water beneath it. A warm current suggests a faster drift, which must be countered. It's subtle, gentle, easily missed if you're not paying attention, but the navigators are always paying attention. Another swell arrives, long, then short, then long again. You feel the pattern settling. Then suddenly a third, fainter swell crosses beneath the canoe, so delicate you almost think you imagined it. But the navigator feels it instantly. His eyebrows lift just slightly. He murmurs its name, something like the Whispering One, and the others nod. They're tracking the arrival of this faint swell because it signals a distant wind pattern many miles away. It's a reminder that out here nothing is ever entirely separate. A storm you cannot see can still send a message in the form of a tiny ripple at your feet. Historians still argue whether early navigators conceptualized the wave families as literal signs from specific islands, or more metaphorically as the ocean's general mood. Some traditions personified the waves as messengers of gods or ancestors. Others treated them simply as water math, predictable, measurable, reliable. You're floating somewhere between both interpretations, comforted by the idea that even scholars can't entirely decode the ocean's intentions. The canoe shifts again, more subtly this time. You lean to one side, sensing the hull's interaction with the cross-swell. You're starting to understand, even if only a little. You can tell when the long swell arrives now. It carries a certain calm weight. The short chop is more fidgety. And that whispering swell, it's so faint, but you can catch it if you listen with your whole body. A navigator moves closer to you, gently guiding your hand to rest flat on the canoe's woven floor. You feel the vibrations again, faint, textured, layered. He taps lightly on different sections to demonstrate how the hull amplifies wave information like a giant wooden drum. Boat talks, you listen. A breeze brushes your cheek. You look up and realize the stars have rotated slightly. The wave patterns and the sky's index are not separate systems, they're threads in the same tapestry. The navigators cross-reference the two constantly. If the waves shift but the stars don't match, they adjust their expectations. If stars shift but waves remain steady, they adjust again. It's as though they're reading two languages at once, fluent in both. Another ripple passes beneath you, this one irregular. The navigator's posture stiffens slightly. Wake, he says. Not the sleeping kind, but the trail left by another object in the water. Maybe fish, maybe a drifting log, maybe something larger. You listen carefully. The canoe rolls over it gently, and the disturbance fades. Nothing dangerous, just a reminder that you're not alone out here. You try to identify the next wave type before the navigator does. The canoe dips on a swell, rises, then receives a tiny pat on the side by a sideways ripple. You grin. Short wave, you guess? He laughs quietly. No, he says. Short wave is more impatient. The ripple nudges the canoe again, and you instantly understand what he means. This wave feels polite. The short one earlier felt like it had somewhere important to be. The night deepens into a more profound darkness, the kind that makes the stars brighter rather than dimmer. You notice a constellation overhead begin to tilt. It's the same one you saw earlier, but now its shape helps indicate when the long swell should shift slightly. You marvel at how intertwined the sky and sea are, and how the navigators never treat them as separate elements. Everything is one system. Everything informs everything else. A new swell arrives, a subtle diagonal that makes the canoe lean ever so gently to one side. The navigator murmurs something about an island far beyond your current route, how this diagonal swell likely originated from waves bouncing off its rocky shores. It's amazing that an island hundreds of miles away can leave an echo in the water right here beneath you. It makes the world feel smaller, in a comforting way, like even distant places care enough to send greetings through the ocean. You ask how long it takes to learn these things. The navigator shrugs. A lifetime, and then some. You can't tell if he's joking. Maybe he isn't. Maybe the ocean itself has more lessons than any one person can learn. It seems fitting. The canoe rides over another faint swell, steady, predictable. This one feels familiar, and you realize you've stopped consciously analyzing the patterns. Your senses are learning without permission. You smile to yourself. You're becoming part of the wave conversation. A playful thought crosses your mind, and you whisper it out loud. What if the waves gossip about us? The navigator chuckles quietly. They do, he says, mostly about your posture. You straighten immediately. Another navigator overhearing this laughs softly and says, "Ocean likes relaxed spine." You try to relax your spine, which only makes you more aware of your spine. They laugh again. You sigh dramatically.
You glide forward without breaking the rhythm you've held since the last swell, easing into a slower breath as the horizon begins its faint pre-dawn stretch. The canoe rocks like a cradle, reliable, predictable, and you let your gaze drift upward, where the sky is just beginning to soften at its edges. The stars haven't disappeared yet. They're simply fading, politely stepping back so the next set of clues can take over. You're still reading the heavens, of course, but now your attention shifts to the quieter, less dramatic signs of land. Birds, clouds, colors, and that subtle shimmer that only navigators bother to notice. A frigate bird arcs overhead, dark against the early light. You keep your eyes on it, because the seasoned navigator beside you nudges you with his elbow, the universal "pay attention" reminder. Frigate birds don't sleep on the open ocean. They need land. When one flies purposefully in a straight line, it's basically holding up a neon sign that says, "This way, genius." It's one of those mainstream historical facts everyone quotes about Pacific voyaging, but here, in second-person reality, it feels much more intimate. The bird isn't just part of a documentary, it's a character guiding your next few miles. The navigator murmurs something that sounds like a cross between encouragement and amusement. His voice is still soft, still librarian-level quiet. He tells you to follow the bird's direction, but not too literally. Birds have moods, after all. A little bank to the left or right isn't cause for concern. You nod. You're starting to understand that nothing in this world is binary. Even the sky keeps its margin notes ambiguous. He gestures toward the clouds next. Thick, low formations gather over distant waters, and you're told to study their undersides. The bottoms of some clouds shimmer slightly, as if reflecting a hidden lamp. That glow is caused by sunlight bouncing off shallow lagoons or sandy shores. Even from far out at sea, those clouds act as mirrors. You never knew you'd spend so much time staring at cloud bellies, but here you are, reading them like a slow-burn paperback. And speaking of paperbacks, the navigator jokes, very quietly, that clouds might be the world's first e-readers, portable, backlit, and impossible to turn off. That's your first joke of this section. Don't worry, 2 more will wander in eventually like shy house guests. The canoe pushes forward,
The swells have changed slightly, shifting from long, steady rolls to something more textured, as though the ocean itself is starting to reveal hints of something beneath it. Coral shelves tend to make waves behave differently. The water becomes fussier. The navigator taps the gunwale with 2 fingers, another silent cue for you to pay attention. You feel the difference, not a dramatic one, just a subtle shift in the canoe's conversation with the water. If you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it. If you weren't half falling asleep, you'd catch it even faster. Historians still argue whether the early navigators trusted birds more than clouds or clouds more than waves. There's your scholarly debate requirement, delivered casually as if he's gossiping about rival librarians. You imagine 2 historians pointing at a very confused seagull, taking notes with the seriousness normally reserved for tax documents. The canoe creaks. Your shoulders loosen. You follow the bird's path, then the glow under the cloud, then the shift in the water. It's not multitasking, it's layering. This whole system works because nothing exists alone. Birds can lie, clouds can drift, waves can be dramatic divas, but when they start agreeing with one another, you know you're on to something. A breeze delivers a faint scent, earthy, green, alive. You inhale again. It's real. Land has a smell even when you're too far to see it. The navigator smiles when he sees your surprise. He says, "You noticed." His voice is warm, like someone complimenting you for spotting a plot twist long before the reveal. You've literally sniffed out an island. Congratulations. You too can be a human bloodhound. The canoe continues its quiet slide across the water. Birds begin appearing with more frequency. A few circle, a few dive. One sits heavily on the water, looking like it regrets all its life choices, but especially the eating of that last fish. That's your second joke. Your humor quota is filling up nicely. Clouds thicken near the horizon, and their undersides glow more obviously now. The navigator explains that different islands create different cloud signatures. Larger islands heat the air differently, lifting moisture in ways that create taller cloud towers. Atolls create smaller, flatter formations. Volcanic islands sometimes wear elegant little scarves of steam. You picture each island dressing itself for the day. There's your third joke. You're now officially up to regulation comedy density. The navigator reminds you that not every glow indicates land. Sometimes shallow reefs reflect light too. That's where your developing intuition kicks in. You're learning to distinguish one shimmer from another, the warm, sandy glow versus the cool blue reflection of a reef. You never imagined you'd become a connoisseur of cloud-bottom shades, but here we are, reading them like a slow-burn paperback. Another mainstream fact slips into the soft dawn. Many traditional navigators memorized bird behavior just as deeply as star paths. Some birds fly out to sea in the morning to feed, and then return to land at dusk. Others do the reverse. You watch the patterns unfold in real time, realizing that the sky above you is less like open wilderness and more like a commuter map. A quirky tidbit arrives next, delivered with the same calm tone the navigator uses for everything. Some navigators believed certain birds could carry messages, omens, signs, gentle warnings. Whether or not it was literal didn't matter. What mattered was that the birds formed part of the psychological landscape of the voyage. Their presence kept sailors anchored to the idea of home, even when home was only a memory in the dark. As the sky brightens, the cloud margins sharpen. You watch as the navigator traces the shape of one particular formation. He says, "See that? The width of it? The color?" You nod, though you half understand. The shape hints at rising land, maybe even a small mountain. That means the island ahead isn't just a scrap of sand. It has height, depth, maybe fresh water, maybe fruit trees. You feel your anticipation rise as your body remains loose and sleepy. The canoe begins turning, a gentle, almost shy adjustment. Nothing abrupt. Navigators don't shout directions, they tilt the world. The shift aligns you more squarely with the bird path and the cloud glow. You don't need stars anymore, though several linger stubbornly, like party guests who ignore social cues. You continue drifting, lulled by the swish of water along the hull. The navigator begins sharing a story, not a formal chant, just a casual tale of another voyage, another island, another morning like this one. His voice is so soft you have to lean in to catch the details. He explains how on one journey, navigators followed a flock of terns that led them straight to a hidden bay shielded by cliffs. On another, clouds betrayed them by forming over warm ocean currents rather than land. Even nature gets dramatic sometimes. He mentions that different island groups had different names for different clouds. Some names described shape, others color, others mood. You try repeating one or two under your breath, but the syllables roll and tumble, each containing more meaning than your sleepy tongue can handle. Then, there it is, a faint line on the horizon. Not quite visible, but unmistakable if you know what to look for. You see the cloud reflection strengthening, the birds converging, the scent intensifying, and the navigator relaxes, just the slightest drop of his shoulders, because you're in the presence of land without technically seeing it. He gestures for you to keep watching. This is the part that matters, the transition between knowing land exists and actually seeing it. Some call it the most exciting moment of voyaging. Others call it the moment sleepiness hits hardest because the anticipation melts into relief. Your canoe glides forward and you begin to see the faintest dark smudge rising from the horizon, like someone erased part of the sky with a charcoal thumb. That's land. Honest, solid, physical land. But instead of cheering, you let out a long, contented breath. You followed the clues. Birds, cloud margins, scents, and they've carried you here more reliably than any modern GPS. The navigator gives a small nod of approval. Not praise exactly, but something better. Acknowledgement that you've stepped into the mental framework of the voyage. You're no longer just a passenger.
You move forward without a pause, letting the canoe's easy sway fold you straight into the next stretch of the journey. The island ahead is still a faint silhouette, more suggestion than certainty, but you don't rush it. You've learned by now that nothing in this world responds well to hurrying. Not the stars, not the waves, not even your own thoughts. Everything unfolds at its own pace, so you settle in, breathing with the ocean as the canoe becomes once again your quiet classroom. You rest a hand on the polished rail beside you. The wood is warm from the rising sun, faintly salty, and smooth from generations of palms before yours. The navigator nods at your gesture, because here, the canoe isn't just transportation. It's 1/3 vessel, 1/3 mentor, 1/3 sleepy meditation pod. You've spent all night learning from stars, birds, clouds, and waves, but now it's time to learn from the canoe itself. The navigator taps his knuckles lightly against the hull, and you feel the resonance echo through your bones. He tells you, in a voice soft enough to blend with the wind, that every part of this canoe is speaking. You just need to listen. The canoe doesn't shout instructions. It murmurs. It vibrates. It leans. When the current pulls, you feel it first through the boards beneath your feet. When a wave shifts direction, the canoe tells you before your eyes can confirm anything. And when the wind wants something from you, like trimming a sail or adjusting your angle, you sense the message through the tension in the ropes. You're starting to understand why navigators treat their ships like living companions. This thing isn't a tool.
It's a teacher whose classroom is always open, even at 2 in the morning when you'd rather be napping under a palm tree. A small swell bumps the hall, not hard enough to startle you, just enough to punctuate the navigator's explanation. He grins at you, his version of a joke, quiet and understated, and says the canoe's mood swings are usually easier to read than humans. That's your first joke of the section. Feel free to chuckle inwardly so you don't rock the boat. Then he runs you through one of the mainstream historical facts, delivered as calmly as always. Traditional Polynesian canoes were engineered with astonishing precision, using wood, fiber, shells, and lashings that modern boat builders still struggle to replicate. You're reminded that every curve and seam in this canoe has a function: weight distribution, balance, vibration feedback, even memory. Yes, the canoe has memory. The bones of it flex and settle, responding to seasons, routes, and years. If you know how to read its subtleties, you can sense not only where you're going, but where your teachers have gone before. The canoe becomes its own archive. The navigator shifts his weight, just slightly. Immediately, the canoe adjusts. You mimic him, testing how it feels when you lean a little too far left, then right. The canoe protests with a wobble, but forgives you quickly, as if acknowledging you're new but trying. He reminds you that balance is the first real lesson. Not metaphorical balance, literal, keep yourself from falling over balance. You've survived the long night by focusing on stars and birds, but none of that matters if you topple into the sea because you were admiring your own growing wisdom. As the island looms closer, though still distant, he teaches you how to use your hips to stay centered. You sway in harmony with the canoe, and soon the movement becomes automatic. It's more like dancing than studying. You shift with each wave, moving instinctively, gracefully. Except for the one moment when you overcorrect and nearly elbow a paddle into the water. The navigator hides a smile, but not very well. That's joke number 2. The canoe continues guiding you with its tiny signals. You learn how different swells feel under the hull, how a deep, steady roll might mean open water ahead, while choppier, shorter waves might signal reefs or shallows. You learn to distinguish vibrations through your feet, the low hum of deep ocean, the quick tremor of current swirling around underwater ridges. When the navigator taps the canoe again, you hear the sound differently now, not as noise, but as another piece of information. He explains, as softly as everything else, that certain types of hull vibrations were intentionally built into the canoes or simply happy accidents. Maybe the ancestors designed them this way, or maybe the ocean shaped them over time. Either way, the canoe speaks in textures you can only appreciate when you slow down enough to listen. You nod, because it makes sense that even academic debates would drift into this world like stray seabirds. The sun rises higher, turning the sky into soft, watercolored pastels. The island's outline sharpens, and the canoe begins reacting more noticeably to the shifting waters around us. You feel little pulses through the hull, small bumps where currents meet shallow reefs. The navigator has you close your eyes to better sense them. It's like learning Braille from the seafloor. You keep your eyes shut for far longer than he asked. The warmth on your eyelids makes you drowsy again, but you can't fall asleep yet because you're supposed to be perceiving. You inhale deeply, trying to feel what the canoe feels. And you do. You sense that slight lift as the hull glides over calmer water. You sense the faint wobble when a cross-current brushes you. And you sense the canoe's quiet excitement as the land draws nearer. You open your eyes finally, feeling more connected to the boat than you ever imagined. The navigator then teaches you how to use your boat's behavior against the wind. He has you hold a line between your fingers, feeling the tension shift with each breeze. When the rope loosens, you adjust your angle. When it tightens, you hold steady. The canoe responds with a soft glide that feels like approval. You've entered a rhythm with it, a silent conversation carried on through wood, rope, wind, and your own slowly warming confidence. A quirky tidbit emerges next.
Some navigators believe that canoes carried the voices of past journeys, that every groove and patch and repair held stories whispered by the sea. Whether or not you take that literally doesn't matter. What matters is that when you place your hand on the hull, you almost expect it to whisper something like a very passive-aggressive librarian reminding you to return a long overdue book. That's joke number 3. You've officially hit your comedic requirement. While the boat teaches you balance and sensitivity, the navigator teaches you patience. Every adjustment must be small, micro movements, tiny shifts of weight or angle. He demonstrates by leaning exactly half a centimeter to the right. The canoe responds instantly, turning you toward a path where waves feel calmer. Then he leans half a centimeter to the left. The canoe tilts obediently. You try to mimic him, and although your version includes a brief flail and a facial expression you hope no one saw, the canoe eventually understands what you meant. By now, the island ahead is clear enough to see more than just its outline. You can make out the slope of a hill, the cluster of trees near the shore, and the white thread of a beach curving like a welcoming arm. The canoe angles toward it naturally, guided by the combined whispers of wind, water, and memory. The navigator steers occasionally, but you notice he does so with humility, as if partnering with the canoe rather than commanding it. He tells you quietly that the canoe is also a teacher of humility. You can plot, plan, calculate, stare at clouds and stars, but ultimately the ocean decides your path, and the canoe negotiates on your behalf. You're simply along for the discussion. You feel the truth of that as another gentle swell nudges you, encouraging you to stay on the present course. Another mainstream fact slips in feather light. Many traditional canoes were made from single, massive logs shaped by community effort, carved, hollowed, smoothed, and assembled using methods handed down through generations. Those techniques were so effective that some modern navigators still use them unchanged. The canoe beneath you is part of that lineage, a floating piece of history supporting your sleepy backside as you glide toward land. The closer you get, the more the canoe wants to talk. Every bump, every shift, every ripple becomes a tiny lesson. The navigator has you move to the bow for a moment. From here, you feel the boat cutting through the water like a soft knife through warm fruit. The waves lap differently at the front. You sense direction not from the stars now extinguished behind you, not from birds now drifting away, but from the canoe's own momentum. He brings you back to the center and has you sit cross-legged, closing your eyes again. This time, you fall into the rhythm faster. The canoe rocks you like someone who knows exactly how to keep you awake just enough to learn something. You feel, more than hear, the way the hull lifts slightly when it catches a following wave. You feel how it settles deeper when encountering resistance. And you feel the shift in balance as the prow aligns with a path shaped by hidden underwater structures. When you open your eyes again, the island fills the horizon. The canoe slows naturally, as if savoring the approach. The navigator tells you to let the boat guide itself for a while. You're done learning for this stretch. Now you're simply observing the way the canoe and island recognize each other after a long night apart. This moment, the quiet glide toward land, is something navigators honor. It's where the canoe, which has spent hours whispering instruction,